Episode 1 of Marshes to Mouths will be covering cattails. We'll be making DIY pickled cattails.
Cattails have been eaten by Louisianans for centuries for their carbohydrates and nutrients.
For these DIY pickled cattail shoots, you'll need a half-gallon mason jar, about 20 medium cattail shoots, 1 bulb of garlic, some chili flakes to taste, 6 cups of water, 1.5 cups of white/apple cider vinegar, about 5% acidity, 4 teaspoons of honey or sugar, 1 teaspoon of sea salt, 3 teaspoons of pickling spice, and at least 1 sprig of dill or sweet white clover or parsley.
Now you can add a few extra vegetables to your pickles. Namely, I like to use white onions, some mini cucumbers, and 1 big cucumber. Just make sure to wash your hands before you cut. You too, Robert.
Yeah, Robert has to watch his too. He's a sous chef.
Yeah.
My little
reverse
sous
this time.
Oh yeah. Watch this, hands. Oh yeah, look at that technique. In between the fingers, baby.
I was just cracking my hands.
Let's see the apron real quick. Gotta listen, guys.
For prepping the cattails, I usually like to get about 5 inches or so here. Those are the most tender parts of the cattail, so I'm just gonna cut. It doesn't have to be exact, you know. And if it's too tough, it's fine. We're gonna remove some layers, and we are gonna blanch these, so usually it only takes about 1 or 2 layers to get to the tender part of the cattail. This. And you'll see why we need about 20 medium cattails, because what you're left with is pretty small. So it's more of a quality over quantity type thing. And after you're done cutting it, you'll wash it off. And I'm going to put them to the side because these don't go in the jars yet. They need to blanch first, just so they're completely tender. Now, if your cattails are a little extra fibrous, it's best to blanch them in boiling hot water. That's it. And before we make our brine solution, we're going to wash and cut all of our extra veggies. This includes those are small and large cucumbers. Now we won't be blanching these because we don't want to mess up their textures. Now we're going to cut all of our veggies. For the little cucumbers, I'm going to cut these lengthwise after cutting the ends off. And this will add a new texture that we've been looking for here. So I'm just going to make spears out of these. When you're done slicing your vegetables, just put them in the jar like so. Don't have to worry about blanching these, because we want to keep the crunch. And for this one, we're going to be doing garlic dill, so I'm going to add about a sprig or 2 of dill. I usually get 1 sprig. Kind of just throw it in there. You want to make sure when you're cutting these veggies that you're using proper knife technique, like not getting your fingers out while you're cutting. And you're not chopping, you're slicing, so you're really going to push your knife forward. And that'll give you a nice clean chop. After you're done chopping your cucumber, just place all of your cucumber chips. And now we're going to get to the onions. But first, our cooking phrase of the day. Mise en place, which means everything in place. Basically, it's just getting everything out ready to be cooked. Now, I'm doing garlic dill, so I'm going to be adding a whole lot of garlic to this. I'd say probably about 5 cloves. That is a lot, but we are using a pretty big jar. We're using a 1.8 liter mason jar. And technique for getting them out of all these hard skins here, just you fit it. And that cracks open the shell, like so.
Next, we're going to be putting the cattails into the pot.
What's that called, Robert? What's that called? What's that technique called?
Blanching.
Correct.
See, I pay attention.
Yep, put them in the pot.
All right. Be very careful, as you don't want to drop it too hard and it boiling water hit your hand. That
Yeah,
sucks.
It does suck.
I've learned from experience.
Put that in. Now we're just gonna blanch these until soft. No real time. It depends on the how hard and fibrous your cattails are. Just remember to be careful and have your fume hood on.
Now, for the measurement of the vinegar, really, you can be pretty liberal in how you want it. Some people put it halfway and they don't really measure at all. But I think that's just a little too strong for what we're gonna be doing today. So I'm gonna be putting in 1.5 cups of apple cider vinegar. You can use white distilled vinegar, or you can use white wine vinegar, but we're just going to put our 1.5 cups here. So I'm really only filling up about a quarter or so of vinegar, but again, you don't have to be very careful on how much you put, because the rest we're putting in is water. Not a particular amount, just enough to fill the rest of the jar, which is about 6 cups or so, depending on how many ingredients you have in the jar. So we're just gonna fill approximately to the top. We still haven't put our onions in. We're putting those in last. We haven't put our cattails in. They're still blanching. So we're gonna leave a little bit room at the top, just for the extra amount of vegetables we're putting in. Now, after our vegetables are done blanching, we're going to put the vinegar from in the jar into a clean pot and heat that up. And what that does is that'll kill most of the bacteria in there that'll cause it to spoil or have a short shelf life. So when you are transferring the liquids from the jar into a clean pot, you just want to make sure, keep your metal lid like that, and pour it like so, just so you don't make too much of a mess and dump these into your vinegar pot.
All right, now that our cattails are done softening up, we scoop them up from the pot and put them right onto the cutting board. So be very careful when you're handling them. Wait for them, give them a second just to cool off, you know. Burning your hand sucks. Means you can't do normal hand things.
Yep.
Now after letting our cattails cool off a bit and putting them in the jar, the last thing we're going to add is our onions. I always put these last, maybe just because they look cooler at the top, I think. I like to think it makes it taste a little better, but that's not true, and that's a lie. So we're going to put these in. Now, if you have a little extra, don't worry about that. If we have a little extra, just pour some out. It won't change much at all. Just need a little bit more room for the rest of the veggies. And you can add...
Very oniony.
It's very, yeah, a lot of onions. Now, you can add however much of anything. Any vegetable can really be pickled. I mean, this is quick pickling, so you don't really have to worry about shelf life that much, since these are going to be refrigerated at all times anyway. Unlike a water canned pickle. However, these pickles are a little better for you. They keep some of their probiotics and healthy gut bacteria and such, but most of the bad bacteria we're going to dispose of by just heating up the vinegar before adding it back to the jar. Now, when you're pickling, measurements aren't always the biggest thing. The biggest factor, I think, is the smell of the brine. Now, when you smell it, you really want there to be a good kick of vinegar, but not too much that it kind of stings to smell it. Just enough to notice it. So if you have a little extra space, you add a little bit more. Really, you just add until it smells just like a pickle. That's what we're doing here. Now, when you have all your veggies out here like this, and your brine base is about to the top, you're gonna get your metal lid that comes with the mason jar, and you put it over, and you're gonna have a little slit to the side. Now this will let all the brine go through without pouring any of the veggies in there. And you do this just so you have it measured correctly. And you're gonna spill a little bit, but that's all right, because again, at the end, add a little extra if you really need. Go. You can add a little extra vinegar at the bottom. It doesn't really matter that much because most of the brine is going to be here. Now remember to always clean up your spills because pickling is a dirty task. There's a lot of spilling. After you drain your pickle juice, you put it to the side. Don't put it too far because after this, we're going to be putting it back in. So you're going to set the heat to about medium, maybe a little medium high. Nothing too much, just enough to be able to kill any bacteria that might be in the jar, like on the vegetables and such, or in the brining solution. And really, measurements for this, again, most of it is by eye. However, for ease, I did put it in teaspoons. Alright, for the teaspoons, you can use a regular small spoon. Most of them are going to be 5 milliliters, which is 1 teaspoon. We're just going to add about a teaspoon of sea salt. Now, coarse salt is best for pickling, so sea salt or kosher salt. You don't want it to be too fine salt. That doesn't do very well. You got a little extra. I like to, especially with the amount of vegetables we have in our jar. That side. Now we're going to do 3 teaspoons of just all-purpose pickling spice. It really doesn't matter. Most of them have, you know, all the same ingredients, but it's a lot cheaper than getting all of the spices in a pickling spice. So I think it's best just buy great value of a container. We're gonna put about 3 tablespoons of these into our brine solution. Now be careful when you're putting them in because again the mixture is gonna be pretty hot. Now most of this you're gonna be stewing is by eye, so it doesn't have to be exact. Just gonna stir in there. Now make sure if you are stirring with a metal spoon, if you have non-stick, Teflon, don't scrape the inside of the pot. That is how you get carcinogens into your food. And next, I'm gonna add 4 teaspoons of honey or sugar. It really just depends on what you want. I like the honey. I think it dissolves a little better in here. And it gives it a nuanced taste, you know, than just normal table sugar. And you're just gonna do some big 3 heaping globs of this. 3 heaping tablespoons, not teaspoons. Pour it in there. And then since it's heated, it's gonna dissolve real quick off your spoon. Make sure not to scrape the bottom or the sides if you're using a metal spoon. This. Now, you can add to taste. At this point, you should be tasting every once in a while if you add these ingredients and see if it needs any extra salt or sugar, or if you didn't put enough pickling spice. Just remember, you can always add more, but it's very hard to get rid of excess with them. This will be our 3rd. Now I prefer the honey. 1, because honey has more health benefits. And 2, I like the taste it gives to the brine. I think it adds just a bit more flavor. That's really what I want in these pickles. I want something flavorful but not overly acidic that it stings your nose every time you smell it and makes it hurt. But let's see. I'm gonna add just 1 more, and then that will be enough to taste. Now after we add this, you could add 2 whole chili pods. I prefer chili flakes or red pepper flakes if you have to. Just add a little spice to it. Again, these are not going to be measured. These are going to be to taste. Depends on how spicy you want your pickles to be. If you're doing chili pods, be more careful because chili pods will make it very, very spicy. If you're not careful, you can easily lose count of how much you put in. And this is about what it should look like. You should be able to see a lot of pickling spice. Alright, a lot of pickling spice. Alright, now we're going to taste just a little bit. Be careful, it is not blazing hot, but it's still pretty warm. Now one of the biggest factors you'll have for your brining solution is smell. And make sure it doesn't burn your nose hairs off whenever you smell it, because I made that mistake in my practices. I think that's good. I might add a little bit more honey just to round it out. I find I always add a little bit more sugar in most recipes, but not as much as bread and butter pickles. Bread and butter pickles are about the unhealthiest pickle you can ever have. Literally, the mixture for a bread and butter pickle is 50% sugar and 50% vinegar. That is all that is in bread and butter pickles and peppercorns. That is a bread and butter pickle. There's nothing else that's special about it. That is a baseline bread and butter pickle. It's half sugar, half vinegar. All right, I think that should be good now. And now we're going to take it off the heat. And I'm gonna have my trusty assistant ladle it into the jar.
All right, when pouring the liquid into the jar, we're not gonna just pour the pan into the jar. Makes a big mess and is very dangerous. So today we're gonna be using a ladle, but you can also use a really big spoon.
Shows the technique, Robert. Big heaping ladle full.
A little bit.
Make sure there's not too much. Avoid spillage. And you just ladle it on until it fills to the top. Remember, we already pre-measured it, so it should be just enough that we need. Now, after ladling all of your brine back into the jar, you're gonna wanna move it over somewhere with some water. And you see, we have a little extra space, and that's all right. Some of the vinegar might have cooked off a little bit. So all we're gonna do, get some water or vinegar if it's not vinegary enough, and you're gonna fill it up to the top. So just a little bit of space. So you wanna make sure your veggies are under, submerged into it. Creates an anaerobic environment, so it doesn't grow any bad bacteria, only good lactobacteria, which is how you make lacto-fermented pickles for your half sours and full sours that you get at delis. Now, after your jar is pretty much filled to the top, and slap on the lid, your middle ring, and you're gonna want to tighten as tight as you can. Be careful, the jar is still pretty warm, and it can get kind of hot. And there is your quick pickle. Now, for storing these, if you do not hot water bath can this by boiling it in water and creating a vacuum in it, these are not shelf stable. You cannot keep these outside of a refrigerator. They will go bad, not in not too much time. You're gonna refrigerate these after it cools down in the refrigerator, and they should be ready after a day or so. These can last you about a month in the refrigerator, so you don't really have to worry about them going bad for a while. Keep your produce fresh, especially if they're at the end of their life. Preserve it just a little bit more. And this was episode 1 of Marshes to Mouths, our DIY Dill Pickled Cattails. This is Ashton.
This is Robert.
And thank you for watching.